Most men think control means winning the argument, but Machiavelli would tell you, the moment you react, you've already lost. Because every time you raise your voice, defend your name, or rush to prove a point, you hand the other person a map to your emotions. And once they can predict your reactions, they can puppet you. The truth is, anger doesn't show strength. It exposes your weakness. You think you're asserting power, but what you're really doing is confessing how easily you can be provoked. That's why the calm man, the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, doesn't beg to be understood, terrifies people. He operates like a mirror. He reflects your chaos back at you without giving you anything to attack. And in that stillness, he wins, not by force, but by psychological dominance. Because confrontation isn't about who speaks louder. It's about who remains unreadable. That's why kings, generals, and even manipulators throughout history used calmness as a weapon, not to appear moral, but to remain untouchable. In this video, you'll learn how to develop that same composure, how to disarm anyone with silence, reframe attacks without defense, and stay calm enough to control the entire battlefield without raising a single word. This isn't about peace. It's about power through restraint. And once you master that, no one will ever be able to use your emotions against you again. If you're ready to become that man, one who's unreadable, uncheckable, and untouchable, then subscribe, because this is where men stop reacting and start ruling. 1. Anger is the lowest form of power. Anger is the easiest emotion to trigger and the hardest one to control. It's why weak men rely on it. It gives them the illusion of power when they have none. When you explode, when you raise your voice, when you clench your jaw and let rage take over, you think you're intimidating someone. You think they'll respect you because you've shown dominance. But here's the truth. The person who made you angry is now in full control of you. They pushed a button and you reacted exactly how they wanted you to. That's not power. That's emotional slavery. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote that a ruler must learn to appear passionate while remaining completely detached inside. Because once emotion rules you, logic abandons you, and your enemies only need to wait for you to destroy yourself. And that's what most men do today. They destroy themselves in real time through reaction. A comment online ruins their day. A partner's words spark an argument that lasts hours. A co-worker's tone flips a switch, and suddenly they're shouting, defending, justifying. That's not strength. That's predictability. And predictable men are easy to control. The calm man, however, is different. He doesn't take the bait. He doesn't rush to defend himself. He observes, measures, calculates. His silence is louder than your shouting, because while you burn your energy proving yourself, he conserves his and studies you. Every reaction you show gives him data, your pride, your insecurities, your pressure points, and he will use them later when it matters most. That's why calmness isn't weakness. It's weaponized restraint. You see, anger feels powerful because it releases tension. It gives you the temporary satisfaction of doing something. But calmness, that cold, surgical stillness, requires mastery. It means holding the tension, letting it burn inside you without letting it leak out. That's what makes it terrifying. People can't read a calm man. They can't tell if he's plotting, analyzing, or simply doesn't care. And that uncertainty drives them insane. They'll accuse you of arrogance. They'll say you're cold, emotionless, or too serious. But that's just their discomfort speaking, because your composure exposes their lack of it. The truth is, society glorifies anger because it's easy to sell. Be passionate, show your emotions, speak your truth, but passion without control is chaos. And chaos destroys kingdoms, internal and external. Machiavelli would say, if you want power, learn to appear emotional only when it serves you. Let others think your silence means indifference when in reality it's calculation. You'll notice this in men who truly lead. They don't rush to respond in arguments. They don't let insult pierce their ego. They don't raise their voice to prove authority. Their tone is authority. Every word they speak feels measured, deliberate, because anger burns seconds. But composure builds empires. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this: they're testing for weakness. They want to see if they can move you. If they can, you've already lost. If they can't, you've already won. You don't need to raise your voice to show strength. You don't need to shout to be respected. You need to become the one thing no one can manipulate. Unmoved. That's the highest form of control. Not through rage, not through fear, but through silence so steady it makes the world uneasy. Because anger is the lowest form of power. Calmness is the highest. And once you learn to master that stillness, you'll realize most confrontations were never about proving who's right. They were about showing who can stay still while the other loses control. 2. Every reaction is a surrender of control. Every reaction you give is a signal, a confession that someone has power over you. They poke and you move. They press and you break. They trigger you and suddenly they're the one in charge. That's the silent truth no one wants to accept. Every time you react emotionally, you surrender control, not just of the situation, but of yourself. Machiavelli would call this the first step toward submission, because the moment your behavior becomes predictable, your enemy doesn't need to defeat you. They just need to provoke you. You think reacting proves strength. It doesn't. It exposes your emotional map. They now know what makes you angry, insecure, defensive, or scared. They can manipulate you without lifting a finger. And that's how most people lose battles without even realizing it. They get baited into defending themselves. They argue to protect their image. They explain themselves to those who've already made up their minds. Every word they say is an act of surrender disguised as self-expression. You see, the one who reacts becomes the follower, not the leader. The one who waits becomes the master. When someone throws emotional bait, silence isn't weakness, it's domination. It forces them to fill the space, to question themselves, to overexpose their intent. Meanwhile, you've revealed nothing. Control isn't about being louder or more persuasive. It's about being unshakable, while everyone else scrambles to interpret your calm. Think about arguments you've had before. The one who talks the most always looks more desperate. The one who stays composed, says little, and observes always appears more powerful. Why? Because composure signals one thing: certainty. And certainty is magnetic. When you react emotionally, you're saying, "You've affected me. You matter more than my peace." When you don't react, you're saying, "You're not powerful enough to disturb me." and that burns them far more than any insult could. Look at any great strategist, leader, or negotiator in history. The calmest one always controls the room. They let others talk, argue, over-explain, then strike with a single line that resets the entire dynamic. That's what Machiavelli meant by appearing passive until the decisive moment. Your ability to stay still when every nerve inside you wants to react is what separates rulers from pawns. Because here's the paradox. Reacting feels powerful in the moment. You feel alive, assertive, in control. But real control isn't about release, it's about restraint. It's the ability to let words fly, insults land, and disrespect appear without flinching, to remain centered while someone else's chaos collapses around them. That calm drives people insane. They'll accuse you of arrogance. They'll push harder, try to get a rise out of you, because your silence threatens them. They need you to react so they can regain the illusion of control. But when you don't, they spiral. They question themselves. They start reacting to your stillness. And now, without saying a word, you've flipped the power dynamic. That's the Machiavellian principle of frame dominance. The one who controls the emotional frame controls reality itself. Once you react, you've stepped into someone else's frame, and you're now playing their game. So when tension rises, don't rush to respond. Pause. Observe. Watch their words fall flat against your composure. Because in that silence, you communicate the one truth that terrifies every manipulator. I am not easily moved. And the moment they sense that, they stop seeing you as a target and start seeing you as a threat. Never forget this. Emotion is the leash that leads most men into weakness. Detach from it, and you move like a ghost, untouchable, unreadable, unpredictable. You can't be controlled if you can't be provoked. And you can't be provoked if your peace no longer depends on anyone else's chaos. That's how you win every confrontation, not by overpowering, but by outlasting. Not by reacting, but by remaining. Because the man who reacts gives up control, but the man who stays still commands it. 3. Silence is a psychological weapon. You don't need louder words. You need colder silence. It forces your opponent to reveal their insecurity. Silence isn't absence. Silence is a strategy. Most men believe arguing harder wins the day. They think volume equals victory. They don't understand what happens when you refuse to play. When you stop answering, the other man is forced to speak for you, and in filling the void, he gives you everything you need. Why does silence wound? Because it turns the spotlight back on the speaker. When you don't react, they must supply the meaning. They must justify. They must keep talking. And people reveal when they talk to avoid the discomfort of stillness. Think of confrontation as a hunger game. A loud man feeds his anger. A wise man withholds his reply. The loud man tires. The quiet man remains full of composed intent. One collapses from expenditure. The other stands ready. You want to know the cruel efficiency of strategic silence? It compresses time. A 10-second pause stretches into an eternity for someone who needs your reaction. That stretch makes them uncomfortable, and discomfort forces error. They rush, they over-explain, they contradict. Their mask slips. You watch, silent, collecting their mistakes like trophies. Machiavelli taught rulers to conceal motive. The less you reveal, the fewer arrows they can aim. Silence is concealment in motion. It makes your opponent guess, and guessing destroys confidence. No one wants to duel with an unknown. How do you wield silence without looking weak? That's the craft. Presence sells the pause. Posture, eye contact, breathing, these are your amplifier. You hold still, keep your voice low, and make the room feel smaller. Your calm isn't passive. It's pressure applied slowly but inevitably. Use silence like punctuation. A short pause severs a sentence. A long silence becomes a verdict. When someone insults you, don't reply with heat. Breathe. Wait. Let their words hang like exposed wiring. Watch how they twitch. Watch them try to plug the gap with louder nonsense. That noise is your advantage. What's the difference between silence that dominates and silence that retreats? Intention, retreat hides. Domination conceals purpose. The dominant silence says, I don't need to prove myself to you. The retreating silence says, I can't fight you. Learn to plant your silence like a flag, not to avoid, but to claim. You'll be surprised how quickly people change when you stop feeding them. The instigator will escalate to absurdity. Allies will grow restless. The room will lean toward you, trying to decode your stillness. Their curiosity becomes your tool. Their hurry becomes your trap. This is not cruelty for show. It's surgical. Use silence to expose motives in negotiations, to collapse insults into awkward echoes, to make a liar unscrew his own lies. Ask one calm question after a long pause, and watch language betray intent. Why do you say that? Simple, direct. The opponent must answer. In answering, they commit. There's another brutal payoff. Silence builds reputation. People begin to assume depth in your quiet. They attribute wisdom where none was announced. Your words become rare and therefore valuable. When you finally speak, it lands heavier because it's scarce. Scarcity is authority. But silence must be trained. Start with texts. Don't respond to every provocation immediately. Let messages sit. In meetings, let others finish. Count to 5 before you speak. Build a habit of delay so that your pause becomes natural, not theatrics. The pause will become an invisible fence. Once someone hits it, they slow down. And remember, silence is a weapon that works best when the opponent expects noise. In a culture addicted to instant reaction, your refusal to react becomes the anomaly that commands the room. They'll label you cold. They'll call you unreadable. Let them. Readability is a liability. The micro payoff comes quick. Control of tempo. People will stop testing you. Conversations shorten. Attacks lose steam. You stop being bait. You start being the axis. The world orbits your calm instead of your chaos. So next time someone tries to drag you into a fight, try this. Let the silence grow long enough to become uncomfortable. Then ask one calm, sharp question. Watch the unraveling begin. Let them reveal themselves. Collect the truth. Move, because in every confrontation, the loudest mouth gives away the most. And the coldest silence keeps everything worth having. The moment you stop speaking first, the room starts speaking for you. Hold silence long enough, and the next word you say will decide everything. 4. Never argue. Redirect the battlefield. A calm man doesn't fight where others invite him. He shifts the terrain. to where only he can win. Most men lose not because they're weak, but because they fight on someone else's terms. They take the bait. They respond to accusations, defend their pride, chase validation, and end up bleeding in battles they never needed to fight. That's how emotional warfare works. Your enemy doesn't need to defeat you, he just needs to pull you into his arena. Once you're there, his rules apply. His words dictate the tempo. His emotions control the flow. And that's why Machiavelli taught, never argue, redirect. When someone attacks you verbally, they're not seeking truth, they're seeking dominance. They want to provoke emotion, force you to explain, to justify, to prove. The moment you explain, you've submitted, because only the accused explains, only the uncertain defend. But the calm man never argues. He observes, he reframes. He makes the battlefield his own. You see, arguments are emotional traps disguised as conversations. They begin with a simple statement meant to hook your ego. You're wrong. You don't get it. You think you're better than everyone, and your instinct is to defend because you know you're right. But in doing so, you've already entered their world. Here's the truth. You don't win arguments by proving points. You win by controlling perception. When someone tries to argue, don't fight for truth. Fight for framing. Frame is power. Frame determines who's seen as the calm leader and who's seen as the emotional follower. And in every confrontation, the one who defines the frame defines reality itself. So instead of arguing, redirect. Shift the ground under their feet. When someone says, "You're wrong," say calmly, "Maybe, but notice how defensive you got when I said that." Now the argument isn't about who's right. It's about their reaction. You've turned the mirror around. When someone says, "You think you're better than me," respond, "Why does my confidence make you uncomfortable?" Instantly, you've changed the frame. You've moved from defense to control. You're no longer explaining yourself. You're forcing them to explain their emotions. And that's where you win. Because the man who controls the topic controls the tone. And the man who controls the tone controls the outcome. Most men can't do this because their ego demands the last word. They argue to win, but a real strategist doesn't argue. He redirects, he reframes, he observes. He wins by making his opponent reveal himself. Think of it like chess. When a fool rushes forward, the master doesn't argue with his move. He shifts position and waits for the overreach. Calm isn't submission. It's ambush. Every argument is a test of ego endurance. The weak man's ego burns hot and fast. He explodes, he defends, he reacts. The strong man's ego burns cold, steady, calculating, patient. He knows silence and redirection are sharper than anger and explanation. When you refuse to argue, you deny your enemy the oxygen he needs, attention. Without it, his words lose energy. His attack collapses. The crowd watching in real life or online sees one man raging and one man still. Guess who they trust? Machiavelli's power wasn't in aggression, it was in redirection. He understood that true dominance is invisible. You don't overpower men. You let them overpower themselves. So next time someone provokes you, pause. Ask yourself, whose battlefield am I standing on? If it's not yours, walk off it. Or better yet, move it. Lead the conversation to where you hold the frame. Turn emotion into observation. Turn accusation into reflection. turn conflict into theater, where you write the script. Because the calm man never wins by fighting harder. He wins by making others fight the wrong war. The argument dies the moment you stop defending and start redefining. Redirect the battlefield long enough, and your enemies start destroying each other just to reach you. 5. Detachment is the root of dominance. You stop fearing loss when you stop needing validation. Control is born in emotional distance. Detachment is not indifference, it's mastery over emotion. Most men misunderstand this. They think being detached means not caring. But true detachment means you care only about what's within your control, and nothing else can pull you off balance. Every argument, every manipulation, every form of pressure relies on your need for something. To be liked, to be understood, to be proven right, to be seen as strong. That need is the leash others pull. They tug, and you react. They withdraw approval, and you chase it. They insult you, and you defend. Every reaction is proof that they own a part of you. But the moment you cut the need for validation, the leash snaps. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. When you're detached, people can't manipulate you. They can't guilt trip you, can't provoke you, can't make you dance for their approval. They don't know what motivates you, and that mystery terrifies them, because most people survive by control. When control fails, fear begins. Machiavelli understood this deeply. A prince could be loved or hated. Both emotions were dangerous. But the one emotion he could weaponize was fear. Not the fear of violence, but the fear of uncertainty. Detachment creates that uncertainty. You move without emotional permission. You decide without explaining. You act with calm indifference to praise or insult alike. That's when people stop testing you and start respecting you. Think of every relationship in your life, friends, women, co-workers, even rivals. Most tension arises from expectation, the need for them to behave, to agree, to stay loyal, to reciprocate. And when they don't, you suffer. But that suffering reveals your dependence. It shows that you've tied your peace to their actions. Detach, and their chaos no longer pulls you. You observe, you adapt. You stay still while they swing at ghosts. You see, emotional distance doesn't make you heartless. It makes you sovereign. When you stop needing constant validation, you move through the world lighter. You don't need everyone to understand your choices. You don't need applause for your silence. You don't need to prove that you're right. You simply are. That's what dominance truly is, quiet, self-contained power. It's the energy that says, I'll walk away if I must, because I lose nothing by leaving. And that's the statement that ends manipulation. Men fall when they tie their identity to how others see them. They build entire selves around external approval, social media validation, relationship comfort, group acceptance. But a man who's truly detached doesn't bend for that. He's guided by internal metrics, not external noise. He measures himself by discipline, purpose, and composure, things no one can take from him. It's not easy. Detachment requires loss, the kind that strips you of illusions. You'll lose friends, comfort, and maybe your reputation. But what you gain is immeasurable, peace that no one can touch. Detachment doesn't mean you never feel. It means you feel deeply, but never let emotion drive the car. You let anger, fear, and disappointment pass through you like weather. observed, but never obeyed. You stop reacting to storms because you've learned they always pass. Most men don't reach this level because they crave control without realizing. Control requires surrender, the surrender of attachment to outcome. You stop trying to make everything go your way. You just focus on your way of responding. And here's the paradox. Once you stop needing control, you gain it, because your calm becomes unshakable. You can walk through chaos and remain centered while everyone else scrambles for stability. That's when influence begins, not from force, but from composure that others cannot replicate. Detachment is dominance because it's freedom. You no longer serve emotion, approval, or outcome. You serve your purpose. And when a man serves only purpose, not ego, no one, not a rival, not a woman, not the world, can move him off his throne. 6. The mirror principle. Reflect their weakness, don't reveal yours. Make them watch their own chaos echo back at them, while your stillness grows unbearable. There's a reason silence unsettles the weak. It forces them to confront themselves. The mirror principle is simple. When confronted with emotional chaos, don't fight it, reflect it. Every outburst, insult, or manipulation they throw at you is a mirror of their instability, not yours. Your job is to let them see it clearly. When someone tries to provoke you, they want to pull you into their emotional storm. The moment you react, you're no longer in control. You're inside their frame. They lead, you follow. But when you remain calm, still, and unreadable, the mirror flips. Now they're looking at themselves, and they don't like what they see. This is psychological warfare at its finest. You never attack directly. You simply hold your position, emotionally, verbally, and physically, until their own reflection destroys them. Think of it like this. When they raise their voice, you lower yours. When they posture, you relax. When they accuse, you look at them without defense or emotion. That silence, that lack of reaction, it becomes a mirror and it burns. Because now, instead of fighting you, they're fighting themselves. They project anger. They project insecurity. They project fear. And the calm man's stillness reflects all of it back to them with surgical precision. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Fear doesn't come from aggression. It comes from uncertainty. When people can't read you, they fear you. When they can't provoke you, they respect you. Your goal is not to dominate by force, it's to dominate through reflection. Let them expose themselves while you conserve your energy. Let them show the crowd their weakness while you remain the constant, composed, detached, in control. This strategy has broken kings, generals, and manipulators alike, because no one can win against a man who refuses to fight on emotional terms. You become the mirror, and in that mirror, they see everything they hate about themselves. In an argument, try this. Don't respond to the words, respond to the emotion underneath them. When someone insults you, don't defend yourself. Simply observe. Hold their gaze. Let the silence stretch. That moment of quiet will crush them harder than any comeback ever could. People expect resistance. They feed off reaction. But when there's no emotional food to eat, their power collapses. You starve their ego. You deny them the energy they need to sustain conflict. The mirror principle is not passive. It's controlled dominance. You're not ignoring them. you're exposing them. And when done right, it makes you appear eerily powerful. Your stillness says, "You don't affect me." Your eyes say, "I see right through you." And your silence says, "You are revealing yourself." This drives emotional people insane. They can't stand the idea that you won't join their chaos. They'll push harder, raise their voice, use guilt, threats, or emotional bait. But every push is another revelation of their instability, and every calm response from you tightens your grip on control. Remember this: stillness isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's what keeps a king seated while everyone else loses their head. In every confrontation, there are two types of power: expressive and reflective. Expressive power is loud, forceful, visible. It burns fast. Reflective power is quiet, subtle, invisible. It burns forever. Be the mirror that exposes, not the fire that reacts. Because when you learn to reflect chaos instead of absorbing it, you become immune to manipulation. You start to see how often people reveal their inner weakness by simply trying to get a reaction from you. Most never realize the calm man wins not because he's emotionless, but because he's disciplined. He feels everything but reveals nothing. His restraint is his sword. His stillness is his armor. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, stop, breathe, and reflect. Let their chaos echo back at them. Let them watch themselves unravel. You won't need to raise your voice, prove a point, or defend your pride. Your silence will do the talking. And that silence will say, "You can't touch me." 7. Calm is not kindness, it's calculation. You're not being peaceful, you're measuring angles, observing reactions, preparing your strike. Most men mistake calm for mercy. They think if they stay soft, people will like them more. They think silence equals kindness. That confusion gets men walked over. Real calm is not charity. It's a tactic. When you stay composed in the face of provocation, you are not being gentle. You are collecting data. You observe tone, tempo, eye movement, posture, the pause before a sentence. You watch for tells. You catalog inconsistencies. You map motives. This is calculation, not compassion. Ask yourself, why does the world respect a measured man more than an excitable one? Because the measured man doesn't give away leverage. He saves his energy. He times his intervention. He makes decisions from advantage, not reaction. Kindness heals. Calm calculates. Kindness forgives. Calm exploits the gap between words and intent. One soothes hearts. The other bends outcomes. Think of conflict as a battlefield of information. Every emotional outburst is a signal. Every accusation is a reveal. When you react, you become an open book. When you remain cold and precise, you force others to become the book, and then you read them. You don't have to be cruel to be strategic. You simply refuse to be fooled by theatrics. You don't take bait. You watch who tosses it. You mark the fisherman. Consider this. A man who smiles calmly while another rages is not being passive. He's calculating the moment when the rager's energy will exhaust itself. He's waiting to act when the opposition's guard drops. That strike is surgical because it's timed from observation, not anger. How often do you speak to prove you're decent instead of to secure an outcome? How often do you apologize to quiet a room, not because you're wrong, but because you fear conflict? Those are emotional expenses. They bleed authority. Calculation conserves authority. It converts restraint into leverage. One measured sentence delivered after analysis undoes 10 impulsive comebacks. This is not heartless. It is effective. You can be precise without being cruel. You can be deliberate without being cruel. You can withhold explanation without being cold. But you must understand the function of your silence. It's not to avoid conflict. It's to control it. When someone pushes you, test them instead of telling them. Ask simple, slow questions that force them to expose intent. What do you want from this? Why is this important to you right now? Their need to justify will reveal their weakness. You will see how fast bluster turns to fluster when someone is asked to explain their urgency. That's the moment advantage shifts. People assume the calm man lacks passion. They misread patience for apathy. They don't realize patience is active. It's discipline waiting with a purpose. And that purpose is to act from superiority, not desperation. What does the calm strategist do after reading the room? He chooses the battlefield. He frames the issue. He selects the moment. He uses small moves that look insignificant until their sum is decisive. He never fights every battle. He wins the right ones. Do not confuse being unreadable with being unreachable. A calculated calmness is accessible on your terms. You offer clarity when it serves you. You retract when it does not. That boundary is what turns presence into power. This mindset leaks into everything: leadership, relationships, negotiations. In leadership, it prevents panic from spreading. In relationships, it prevents manipulation. In negotiations, it converts concession into currency. You don't owe anyone constant availability just because they demand it. You don't owe explanation as payment for your dignity. The man who treats his calm as calculation controls the tempo of every interaction. You will be called cold. You will be labeled detached. Good. Those words mean you're harder to predict, harder to manipulate, harder to defeat. Kindness can be given freely. Power cannot. Power must be preserved and exercised with intent. So start measuring. Record how people react to your silence. Note who pushes and why. Decide which fights are worth your energy. Choose your moments and strike with quiet precision. Calm is not a refuge. It's a weapon when wielded with thought. When you trade reflex for calculation, your presence becomes a policy. Everyone must approach you on your terms or not at all. And that is dominance. That is control born from discipline. That is how the modern Machiavellian man operates. 8. Mastery is emotional apathy in motion. You've won the moment you no longer care how they perceive you, because perception itself becomes your tool. There's a quiet shift that happens the day you stop needing approval. Not pretending to stop, not suppressing the need, but truly erasing it. That's the day you stop being reactive and start being untouchable. Because as long as perception matters to you, you're enslaved by it. Every opinion becomes a string that jerks your emotions. Every judgment becomes a mirror you perform in front of. And the more you perform, the less control you have. Apathy, true earned apathy, is not indifference. It's strategic detachment. It's knowing the game so well that emotional involvement is optional. It's not that you don't feel. It's that you've trained what gets your feeling. This is where mastery begins. when you see perception as clay, not scripture. Most people are molded by how others see them. The master sculpts that perception, bends it, twists it, redirects it. He lets people think they've figured him out, while he quietly sets the stage for their next assumption. That's why Machiavelli said it's better to appear virtuous than to be virtuous. Not because morality is weakness, but because visibility is leverage. What people believe about you is often more useful than what's true about you. The weak man craves understanding. The strategic man craves misdirection. He understands that power lives in ambiguity. When no one can clearly read you, they can't prepare for you. Emotional apathy, then, is not lifelessness. It's deliberate focus. It's the filtering of reaction. When someone insults you and you don't flinch, not because you're numb, but because you're observing, that's apathy in motion. You're watching them reveal more in 10 seconds of emotion than they ever would in 10 hours of honesty. Every confrontation becomes a performance. You don't fight the actor. You direct the scene. You let their words bounce off your indifference until they run out of energy. Then you choose your moment to act. Remember, every emotional investment is a leak in your authority. You cannot master strategy if you're busy managing your image. You cannot master outcomes if your self-worth depends on reaction. The truly calm man doesn't chase respect. He creates an atmosphere where respect becomes the only acceptable response. He does that by being unaffected, by not explaining, by not chasing validation in silence or in speech. Apathy frees bandwidth. It gives you room to calculate while others combust. It allows you to treat insults as information, not injury. It lets you operate in the world as if you're behind one-way glass. You see everything, yet no one can see what truly moves you. People often misunderstand this concept. They think apathy means not caring about anything. But the truth is, it means caring only about what matters. Not about noise, ego, or being liked. It's about allocating emotion like currency and spending it only where it returns power. In leadership, this kind of composure separates rulers from the ruled. The moment a leader starts reacting to every insult, every rumor, every provocation, he descends from command to chaos. But the leader who remains unbothered, who speaks less and listens more, whose expression barely changes no matter the storm, becomes mythic. People project meaning onto his silence. They fear his unpredictability. They respect his distance. Emotional apathy in motion is that exact balance, stillness that moves things. You don't chase the flame. You sit still long enough for the flame to come to you. Because when you stop chasing perception, it begins to orbit around you naturally. The ultimate freedom is to no longer need to prove you're free. The ultimate confidence is to no longer announce you're confident. And the ultimate mastery is to no longer care whether they see you as strong, cruel, gentle, or distant. You just are. Your presence becomes a statement. Your silence becomes a boundary. Your calm becomes a throne. That's emotional apathy in motion. A king who no longer plays the game because the board itself now bends around him. Every man wants control. Few ever earn it. Because control isn't about dominance, it's about discipline. It's not about winning arguments, it's about mastering your emotions so completely that arguments lose their power over you. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that the calmest man in the room holds the real authority, not because he shouts the loudest, but because he feels the least. He plays life like a game of chess, not a street fight. You've now seen what true composure looks like. It's not silence out of fear, but silence out of focus. It's not kindness out of weakness, but calmness out of calculation. It's detachment, self-control, and ruthless awareness all wrapped in stillness. Most men live like open books, every emotion, every insecurity visible to anyone who looks closely. But power belongs to the man whose pages are sealed. Because when people can't predict you, they can't control you. And when they can't control you, you control everything. So the next time confrontation finds you, whether it's a coworker, a stranger, or someone you love, don't rush to defend your pride. Observe, pause, let silence stretch. Make them reveal themselves first. That's where your dominance begins, not in reaction, but in restraint. Because true power isn't loud, it's composed, it's quiet. It's dangerous. If this message hit you where it should, if it made you see yourself differently, comment below. Tell me how you've dealt with control, emotion, and composure in your own life. I read every single one. And if you're ready to master your mind, not just your temper, subscribe. Subscribe and join the brotherhood of men who don't chase calmness. They become it.